She lost her life in a tragic accident and, in an extraordinary moment, had the opportunity to see Jesus face to face. She returned from that heavenly encounter, filled with an urgent despair, determined to warn all of us. We are preparing in the wrong way for the rapture. What she witnessed in the spiritual world will challenge everything you believe about faith, grace, and salvation. Now, allow me to share a fascinating story. My name is Catarina Mendez. I am 42 years old, and until recently, I lived in Belo Horizonte, where I worked as a nurse in a public hospital. I have always dedicated my life to caring for others, but over time, I realized that my Christian faith had turned into a mere routine, losing the intensity of true passion. Every Sunday, I found myself at church, where I sought a moment of peace amidst the hustle and bustle of life. I read the Bible from time to time and prayed whenever the thought came to me. My routine was a true marathon, filled with shifts, taking care of my 2 children, and the countless responsibilities of everyday life. However, in recent months, something changed. I found myself immersed in videos and sermons on the internet that spoke about the return of Jesus, and this new passion began to take hold of my heart. Pastors from various parts of Brazil, and even from abroad, started proclaiming that the rapture would occur in September 2025. Intrigued, I dove into a sea of information on the subject, watching videos and reading texts that promised to reveal signs, confirmations, and prophecies related to this highly anticipated event. Deep within me, there was a profound yearning for this promise of escaping the hardships of life. To prepare myself, I decided to pack a small backpack with essential items. My husband, Paulo, thought I was overreacting, but he always respected my beliefs. The kids, Ana, who is 12, and Miguel, who is 8, were full of curiosity about the sky and wondered what it would be like when Jesus came to take us. With enthusiasm, I began to explain, painting a vivid picture in their minds. The clouds majestically parting and all of us rising together towards the meeting with the Lord. The young woman remained at the window, her eyes fixed on the starry sky of Minas Gerais, eager for a sign, a flash, any indication that could announce the arrival of the long-awaited moment. However, when September came and went without anything happening, a deep disappointment took hold of his heart. I had reorganized my life, postponed dreams, and convinced my family to prepare for what was to come. In the church, some discreetly mocked my conviction, while others shared in my disappointment. Thus I plunged into a silent spiritual crisis. I continued attending the services, but something inside me had broken. It was a rainy Thursday in October, and that day everything was about to change. As I drove towards the hospital, as I did routinely, my mind was filled with unanswered questions. Why had Jesus not returned yet? How could so many pastors announce that date with such conviction? As I drove along the bypass, the torrential rain made visibility almost nil. I struggled to keep my focus on the road, but my mind wandered in a whirlwind of disappointments and doubts about my faith. It was in that moment of distraction that I didn't notice the truck, out of control, approaching rapidly around the steep curve. When I realized it, it was already too late. I remember the brutal impact, the sound of metal deforming, and the deployment of the airbags. And then, everything went dark. A deep darkness. What happened from that moment on is something that is difficult for me to express in words. I felt myself floating above my destroyed car. I watched my motionless body, trapped between the twisted metal. Around me, people rushed by, and the distant sound of sirens echoed, but curiously, I felt no fear. An inexplicable peace enveloped me, as if I were wrapped in a blanket of pure serenity. I tried to call the paramedics who were arriving at high speed, but my voice seemed to reach no one. I watched, helpless, as they removed my body and placed it in the ambulance. I wanted to scream at them, but an invisible force was pulling me away, in an unknown direction. a soft light began to emerge, not blinding, but incredibly welcoming. It was as if this light was calling me by name, not with words, but with an irresistible attraction. I felt myself being guided by it, which shaped into a luminous tunnel in front of me. As I moved forward, a feeling of expansion took over every part of my being. My consciousness pulsed with a vividness I had never experienced before. The worries of the outside world seemed insignificant, almost as if they were at an unreachable distance. The tunnel before me did not evoke fear. On the contrary, it presented itself as a true path back home, a return to a place I have always known, but which, over time, I forgot. At the end of that illuminated corridor, I entered a space that cannot be compared to anything I have ever seen on Earth. There were no defined walls, no floor, no ceiling. It was as if everything around me was woven with living light, a pulsating consciousness that emanated warmth and life. The light, with its golden hue, resembled the sun in its splendor, but, contrary to what one might imagine, it did not offend the eyes. On the contrary, she nurtured, cradled, and revealed hidden secrets. It was then that I noticed other presences around me, like dancing reflections in the water, moving gently, in serene harmony. There was no defined shape, but I felt they were beings of light, perhaps angels or souls. No one spoke, but everything around communicated. It was as if the light itself had a voice, and it was at that moment that he appeared. It was not like in the paintings of the churches or in the movies I had watched. It was a presence that transformed everything around it into mere reflections. The light materialized in a way that was not physical, but became visible. A tunic, whiter than any whiteness one could imagine, flowed around him like golden smoke. His face was not just composed of features, but radiated pure love. It was instantaneous. I knew it was Jesus. Not because he revealed himself, but because my soul recognized him immediately, as if every cell of my being vibrated in harmony with his presence. Although he did not have a physical body, an irresistible force led me to kneel, to prostrate myself, to worship. "Katerina," he pronounced. His voice was like a crystal-clear river, flowing smoothly through eternity. My name on his lips resonated like a melody I had always known. But in truth, I had never fully listened to it. "Why did you listen to men instead of me?" There was no reproach in your words, only a loving truth that touched the depths of my soul. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen, beyond the masks and roles I played in this world. I tried to respond, but I had no lips or voice. Only my heart pulsed with questions. "Lord, why did you not come? Why did you leave us at the mercy of waiting in vain?" The light that surrounded Jesus intensified, as if a divine breath enveloped me, and his voice continued to echo. "Many have spoken in my name, but I did not send them. They promised emotion, but did not bring results. They announced dates, but forgot to cry out for holiness. Now, it is time for me to reveal to you the true meaning of being prepared, for the rapture has not been canceled, but my people are still not ready." At that moment, something inside me broke. The old man of illusion, the faith fed by videos and slogans, the hope built on human words. I understood that I was about to face the raw truth, the one that few wish to hear, but that, in fact, sets free. Jesus extended his hand, and like a magic trick, the scenery around us transformed. We saw vibrant cities, houses and streets filled with life, where millions of faces intertwined under the same artificial light. It was not the celestial light that we usually admire, but rather the one that emanated from the screens surrounding us. There was no darkness, but neither was there true light. It was a warm glow, similar to that of a candle lit in a room without oxygen. "Look, Katerina," Jesus said, and his voice echoed in my mind like a blend of love and pain. "This is the faith that permeates our days. It is not dead. but rests with its eyes open. I have seen people of all ages sitting on sofas, with the Bible open next to their cell phones. Your hands run over the verses, but not to meditate. They merely copy and paste. God's words are posted as if they were simple motivational quotes, thus losing their profound meaning. The Lord is good, God is with me, the victory is mine. These words echoed, accompanied by hearts, emoticons, and a flood of likes. However, Jesus revealed to me the true meaning behind them. They were empty. Not because they were false, but because no one actually lived them. I watched the sermons on YouTube, but the truth is that no one was really paying attention. Parents were distracted scrolling through social media, while the children were having fun with their cell phones. On the screen, the pastor spoke about blessings, prosperity, and victories in faith, but his words seemed to echo in a void. Jesus fixed his gaze on me, and his expression became serious. This is the first deception, Katerina. They have turned faith into entertainment. His words penetrated my being like arrows of light. As he spoke, I envisioned the church filling up every Sunday, as if it were a theater in full performance. People entered, applauding, laughing, and getting emotional with the music that played. Some even cried, but in the end, they left just as they had arrived. No one seemed to seek silence, nor reflect on regrets. Jesus revealed to me the hands of these people. They were clean, well cared for, but empty. And her voice flowed like a river that carves the rock over time. They say glory to God with their lips, but in their hearts, they feel the fear of being alone with me. They can no longer remain silent, for it is in silence that the truth reveals itself. My voice was confused with a distant echo, lost between one notification and another. It was then that I came across a scene that left me in shock. Thousands of people kneeling, with their hands raised towards a screen. In it, there was no human face, but rather an incessant flow of religious videos, sermons, and music. At the center of it all, a massive luminous inscription proclaimed the connection with God. However, Jesus made me realize what was really happening in their hearts. An absence of connection, just a sea of noise. It was as if I were dressed in reverse, exposed behind a showcase full of emotions. I reflected on my last years, which were also dedicated to seeking God among videos, predictions, and the words of other people. I confused faith with information, presence with content, and I realized how much I was also responsible for this superficiality. Jesus looked at me with infinite compassion and said, "Katerina, my people seek me in words but not in pauses. They seek me in songs, but not in tears. I am not in the silences of the music, but in the heartbeat that quiets itself to listen to me." As he spoke, the vision around me began to transform. Everything around plunged into darkness, until gradually, a single figure stood out. A young man kneeling in an empty room. There was no music, no light, just him and the deep silence that surrounded him. With a soft voice, he prayed, and with each word spoken, a subtle aroma seemed to rise, like a delicate perfume spreading through the air. Jesus said to me, "Look, this is what is missing. The silence that opens to eternity. The world fears silence, for it is in it that the masks fall. But it is precisely in that space that I speak. It is there that I prepare my bride." So, I realized that true preparation for the rapture did not consist of calculating the day of his coming, nor in seeking signs or prophecies. What really mattered was relearning the art of being silent, allowing God to fill the void that we currently occupy with so many distractions. Jesus lifted his eyes to the sky, and his voice transformed into a gentle wind that at the same time brought a shake. "Those who cannot remain silent by my side will not be able to hear the sound of the trumpet when I return. This trumpet will not sound to announce a spectacle, but rather a return filled with love." His words spread like light, and all the sound of the world seemed to dissolve. I myself experienced an inner silence I had never known, as if my soul became an empty space, filled by God. I understood then that this silence was not an absence, but a profound communion. For the first time in years, I did not wish to hear anything other than that silence. I just wanted to be there, immersed in that presence. When the first vision dissipated, only a light remained that, instead of hurting, illuminated. I realized that each word of Jesus was not just a teaching, but a true purification. While I was still absorbing that sacred silence, he took a step, and the reality around us transformed, as if a curtain were being drawn back to reveal a new scene. I found myself floating above a city, but it was neither a city of the past nor of the future. It was ours. The streets, the shops, the houses, and even the traffic lights were the same ones I knew. But now I observed them from above, as if each roof held a visible soul and each window a secret waiting to be revealed. Jesus looked at me with a deep gaze, and with a soft voice yet sharp as a blade said, "Now I will reveal to you the divided heart of my people." I felt as if intense visions were unfolding within me, more vivid than anything I could see before me. Men and women leave the churches on Sundays, smiles on their faces, greeting and hugging each other, exchanging words of blessing. God has blessed you. However, as if time had taken a leap, on Monday morning, these same individuals arrive home shouting at their children, insulting their spouses, complaining about their boss, and judging their neighbors. Their hearts fill with bitterness over small things, like traffic or a poorly chosen word. Jesus revealed to me the story of a woman who every night devoted herself to prayer with fervor. However, in her heart, she carried a deep resentment towards her sister, with whom she had not spoken in a decade. I also saw a man who dedicated his time to teaching the Bible to young people. But behind his wisdom, he hid a pain. He had never been able to forgive his father for the wounds left in his childhood. Vi pastores, singers, missionaries, all of them sincere and devoted, but trapped by invisible chains forged from resentment, pride, and rivalry. When Jesus looked at me, I saw a deep sadness in his eyes, not of condemnation, but of compassion. Many Christians believe they are saved simply by attending a church, he commented, but in reality, their hearts remain imprisoned. It is not worship that allows me to access heaven. It is the forgiveness that makes it accessible to you. I cannot take with me those who still feed on hatred. The kingdom is not a shelter for those who hate, but for those who free themselves. These words struck me deeply, making me feel the weight of my own history. I reflected on my older sister, Louisa, and the long years of silence that separated us. I remembered the messages that were never answered and the accusations that hurt me deeply. I thought about how many times I raised my prayers for her, always wishing that it would be her to take the first step, to apologize, and to restore our bond. And for the first time, I understood the division that existed within my own heart. Jesus, with his wisdom, touched my shoulder and, in the blink of an eye, my past revealed itself before me, as if I were looking into a mirror of water. I remembered Paulo, my husband, arguing with me about the time I spent watching videos about the Rapture, instead of being truly present for our family. I recalled how I had asked God for understanding, but inside me, the resentment only grew. I said that I forgave him, but in truth, I had never done so from the heart. I had never been able to forgive myself. It was then that Jesus spoke to me with a gentle voice, almost like a whisper. Forgiveness, Katerina, is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it is the mark of someone who has understood the depth of the pain they carry. You long to be taken to ecstasy, but how could I elevate you if within you still weighs the burden of resentment? My spirit can only ascend where there are no chains that bind. Before us, men and women appeared holding suitcases. However, these were not ordinary suitcases. They were transparent bags filled with resentments. Some of them carried names, others held memories, and some still contained offenses, written like wounds that shone brightly. Everyone struggled to rise, but the more they tried, the more love pulled them down to the ground. It was then that I noticed a few, very few, who decided to rid themselves of their burdens and look up. Jesus gently lifted them, as if they were feathers. I watched closely, absorbing every nuance. Forgiveness, I realized, was not just a feeling. It was a door that many close without realizing it. "Lord," I said, my voice choked. "How can a man forgive those who destroyed his life?" Jesus smiled with a tenderness that melted my heart. "I do not ask that you forget, but rather that you no longer carry the poison in your veins. To forgive is to allow me to dwell in your wound. It is to trust that justice belongs to me, not to you. And those who understand this, when the trumpet sounds, will rise in weight, for nothing will be able to keep them bound to the earth." Their words descended upon me like an explosion, and I felt my heart open in a completely new way. For the first time in years, I found myself thinking about my sister, Sister Sendor. I prayed for her, not asking for her to return, but wishing that she would be loved, wherever she might be. It was then that Jesus smiled at me, and his face lit up like the sun that rises after the rain. This is the second way to prepare Katerina: unconditional forgiveness. Those who hold on to grudges will not be able to rise when the trumpet sounds. Heaven does not open for divided hearts. As she uttered these words, she noticed that the world around her was trembling slightly, as if those words were an invisible wind, gently blowing over each house, each church, and each soul. Some doors opened, revealing new worlds, while others remained locked, guarding secrets. In the midst of this silence, my heart was beating intensely. He realized that he had just witnessed the most subtle sin among believers. He understood that to forgive was, in fact, to learn to breathe in heaven. The next vision emerged like a radiant glow, as if eternity itself were turning a page. Jesus looked at me in silence, and in that silence, there was a solemn depth, as if it were a prelude. Suddenly, the ground beneath our feet opened up, and in an instant, I found myself floating above a city that was familiar to me. It wasn't just Brazil, it was the entire world. A true mosaic of lights, with the pulsating traffic, bright screens, and neon signs that cried out, "Buy, own, enjoy." The voice of Jesus echoed within me, like an ancestral sound, filled with sadness and firmness. "Look, Katerina, this is the altar of comfort, the most revered idol of your time." What I saw left me speechless. People no longer knelt in prayer before crosses, but rather before shelves. Supermarkets overflowing with everything one can imagine. Shopping carts brimming with products that, in reality, no one would ever use. People were not buying out of necessity, but rather to fill a void that resided within them. Each acquisition became a small act of faith in an invisible God, the God of more. Jesus revealed to me the scene of men and women entering churches with the same fervor with which they entered shopping malls. They were not seeking redemption, but rather blessings. They did not desire the cross, but a way to live with meaning. In the pulpit, some pastors promised prosperity as if it were an inalienable right, rather than a divine gift. They claimed, "If you contribute, God will multiply your offering tenfold." They said that if you believed, you would suffer no more. And every word spoken, every applause echoed, every laugh that filled that stage transformed into an offering on an invisible altar. Jesus then bowed his head, and a spark of pain crossed his illuminated face. "This is the third deception, Katerina. They seek me in comfort, but not in the pain of the cross. They desire a kingdom without sacrifices, a celebration without renunciations, a heaven that demands nothing. They turned my gospel into a mere warranty contract. Their words gave me a new perspective. I began to notice churchwomen building luxurious mansions with the money from the offerings. I saw preachers traveling in private jets, surrounded by followers who believed they were serving God by enriching these leaders. I witnessed Christian families going into debt in the pursuit of an appearance of blessings. It was not an act of gratitude, but rather a competition for status, a shining yet empty gospel. It was then that Jesus revealed to me his altar. It was not an altar adorned with gold or bright lights, but rather made of rough wood, stained with blood and tears. The cross. "This is the only altar that saves," he proclaimed, his voice vibrating with an intense mix of power and love. Despite everything, they pushed him to the margins, feeling too uncomfortable to hear his sermons and too poor to present themselves on his stages. But I have never been a God of comfort. I am the God of fire that purifies, of loss that liberates, and of trials that transform. Every word that echoed within my being was like a flame that, instead of burning, revealed. I recalled my youth, when money was scarce, but peace was abundant. I remembered our modest home, built with dedication and effort, where luxury never had a place, but love was always plentiful. As time went by, I realized that I too had begun to seek material security, as if that were a sign of divine blessing. My prayers, once focused on understanding, now concentrated more on having than on being. Jesus looked at me with a deep gaze, as if he were examining a wound to heal it. "Katerina, he does not condemn wealth itself, but rather the attachment that many have to it. I do not wish for my people to live in poverty, but rather in freedom. After all, those who accumulate too much often end up being dominated by what they possess. The rapture will not occur among those who cling, but rather among those who detach." At that moment, the vision transformed once again. Before her eyes, two groups of people appeared. On one side were those who hoarded, building walls of material goods around them. On the other side were men and women who offered what they could without hesitation. They shared their bread and even divided the last blanket they had. Although the former seemed imposing, their houses were as fragile as glass. The latter, although they appeared to be devoid of possessions, were surrounded by a light that the world could not extinguish. Jesus then lifted his eyes to heaven and proclaimed, "Those who are not willing to give up everything cannot be considered truly prepared. My return is not meant for those who fear scarcity, but for those who have already surrendered completely." I turn to those who have learned to live in simplicity, not as a mere aesthetic, but as true free souls. For only those who have freed themselves from the shackles of the world can enter my kingdom. These words hung in the air like an indelible seal. I realized that he was not addressing only the wealthy, but also me. With every believer who allowed themselves to be ensnared by the illusion of having control over their own life, the message resonated with undeniable strength. Before we continue, just one request. Please subscribe to our channel. It really helps us keep going. Before proceeding, just one request. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot to keep going. Jesus reached out his hand towards me, and I could see the marks of the nails in his palm. From those wounds emanated a light that seemed to convey a deep message. True wealth lies in loving without limits, in giving without hesitation, and in trusting without expecting guarantees. The vision began to slowly dissipate, and in the end, only one certainty remained in my heart. Comfort is not a blessing. It is, in fact, an anesthesia. For those who wish to hear the trumpet, it is necessary, above all, to awaken from the sleep of well-being. The vision unfolded slowly, like a curtain being drawn back, and for a brief moment, I believed I was back on Earth. However, that was not the world I knew. It was as if I were seeing through the eyes of the Spirit, where nothing can remain hidden. I observed not only the interiors of the houses, but also what was happening in the hearts of their inhabitants. Each environment reflected a vibrant light or plunged into shadows, depending on the emotions that filled it. Beside me, Jesus was present. His face, although illuminated, carried a deep and unknown sadness that I had never witnessed before. "I want to show you," he says softly, "the most silent betrayal of all." Before us stands a modern house filled with comfort and technology. The imposing dining table occupies the center of the space, but around it, an unsettling silence prevails. A mother was fixated on the screen of her cell phone, completely absorbed. The father, in turn, was typing messages while chewing, not paying attention to his surroundings. The children, entertained, were laughing at a video they were watching. Each one was immersed in their own digital universe, isolated in their activities. There were no conversations, no prayers, not even a moment to give thanks. Jesus made me draw closer, and as I looked at the souls, I realized they were extinguished flames, like candles that had never been lit. "My word," Jesus said with a trembling voice, "no longer resides at home, but in cold statistics. They speak of me in surveys, but forget about meals. Prayers have been replaced by notifications, and the gospel has given way to agendas. Parents, instead of teaching their children to be saints, guide them to seek success." These words impacted me deeply, as if they were stones thrown against me. I felt the throbbing pain of millions of homes where God has been relegated to an attic, forgotten among memories and old photographs. Jesus continued to reveal touching scenes to me. I saw families that, in times past, gathered in prayer, but now let themselves be carried away by the rush of everyday life. Between work, the gym, commitments, shopping, and hours of streaming, time seemed scarce. And when they finally managed to sit together, what remained was not space for the spirit, but only the accumulated fatigue. Then, I observed parents who, fearful of not imposing their faith, had chosen to remain silent about Jesus to their children. The Bibles remained closed, while the tablets were always on. Jesus revealed to me the children of these parents, now adults, who laughed at faith, treating it as a relic of a distant past. It was a story that seemed destined only for the older and more superstitious. I even saw some of them sharing scornful phrases directed at God on social media, without realizing how much the situation was drifting away from reality. It was then that Jesus paused. 2 tears of light fell down his face. They carried not only pain, but also a love that still persisted, waiting. "Look, Katerina, this is the deepest betrayal. It is not hatred that hurts, but indifference. They did not deny me with shouts, but silently forgot me, exchanging my presence for the clock, for the smartphone, and for the rush, moving towards emptiness. I knocked, but the noise of the world around me drowned out my voice. It was then that a new scene unfolded before me. A small, modest country house, simple and unassuming. Inside, a mother and her 2 children were gathered around the table. Together, they prayed in a soft murmur, with their hands intertwined and their eyes closed in devotion. The light that descended from the sky upon that family was so intense that it blinded everything around. Jesus smiled through his tears. "I am still here," he said, where they pray together. "The rapture will begin in these homes, and not in the palaces. Where the fire still shines, I approach like a thief in the dead of night, but I know I will find the light." Your words resonated within me, making me reflect on my own journey. I recalled the moments when my children were small, and I gathered them every night to read a psalm. The house emanated a deep peace, as if it were alive. Over time, and with the hustle and bustle of everyday life, I let that light fade, and my children, innocent, walked in the darkness. Now, I finally understand. It was not God who withdrew. It was us who extinguished the flame. Jesus placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, and as I looked around, I saw thousands of houses scattered across the world. Some of them shone brightly, like beacons illuminating the night, while others sank into a deep darkness. In the places where prayer pulsed with life, even the walls seemed to vibrate with the spirit that dwelled there. Where I was absent, even the religious images appeared devoid of life, reduced to mere decorations. "Katerina," he told me, "the fourth way to prepare is this: to rebuild the prayer of the home and to rekindle the fire in the houses. My church is not limited to just the temples. It extends to the tables, the beds, and the hallways. When a family gathers again to pray, heaven returns to inhabit those walls." I listened attentively, but at the same time, I felt the weight of a question pulsing inside me. What if it's already too late? Jesus looked at me with a penetrating gaze, as if he had read my thoughts, and before I could utter a word, he replied, "It is never too late for those who decide to return. Every home that kneels becomes an altar. Every request for forgiveness made before the arrival of children becomes a prophecy. I do not long for perfect families, but for those that welcome me with open hearts." The vision gradually faded, but your words continued to resonate within me, like an old song that never fades away. I understood that the world did not become cruel due to great sins, but rather because of small, everyday forgetfulness. The fire of hope did not extinguish all at once. It slowly faded away, each time a family fell silent. Tomorrow, we will gather in prayer. As the light around me transformed, Jesus concluded his words with a firm, yet gentle voice. He said, "When the trumpet sounds, I will not seek out the largest churches, but rather the homes where my voice still resonates. The rapture will begin at that moment." I knelt down, not out of fear, but from a deep longing. I understood that the true end of the world occurs when a family stops praying together, and true salvation arises when that same family decides to start over. The light that surrounded me flickered like a flame at the mercy of the wind. It was then that I realized a new vision was about to be revealed. Jesus stood by my side, in silence, but his presence was so intense that it filled the entire environment around us. Suddenly, I found myself in front of an imposing building that stood out in the landscape. It was like a modern cathedral, made of glass and steel, adorned with colorful lights that pulsed in harmony with the music. Outside, a huge crowd was gathered, moving as if heading to a big concert. A striking illuminated sign stood out at the entrance. Faith Experience. Live the best of Sunday. Below, an even more impactful sentence caught my attention. God wants you happy, not hurt. Looking at me, Jesus conveyed a deep sadness through his eyes, but at the same time, an infinite passion that warmed the heart. Upon entering Katerina, I realized that a part of my church was there, immersed in a vibrant environment. As soon as I crossed the threshold, I was enveloped by an explosion of sounds, colors, and aromas. The floor pulsed with the bass of the music, while the lights danced over smiling faces. Hands were raised, applauding in sync with the infectious rhythm. There was nothing wrong with that, I thought. It was as if joy, enthusiasm, and life were there, pulsating. However, the more I observed, the more I realized that something was missing. The stage resembled that of a vibrant festival, while the screen in the background displayed images that seemed to dance. Believe in yourself and become your own victory. Faith is a powerful force. Every word spoken was filled with motivation, but none of them truly managed to touch the soul. The preachers moved with shiny microphones, while the singers gestured like true celebrities. The audience laughed, applauded, and cried on command, creating an atmosphere of perfect harmony. However, behind this apparent perfection, God seemed absent. Jesus invited me to look more closely. People were hugging each other, but when I looked into their eyes, I noticed a deep emptiness. Some people were taking selfies holding the Bible, while others were recording the sermon to share on social media. The atmosphere was undoubtedly thrilling. However, this excitement seemed to arise from the crowd rather than from the true spirit. It was like witnessing an imitation of the sacred, but without the fire that truly brings it to life. Then, Jesus addressed everyone, and his voice resonated, drowning out all the music around, although no one else could hear it. The fifth deception, Katerina, he said, is the religion of emotion. People do not seek the truth. They yearn for the sensation of the sacred. They only wish to feel good, not to become saints. They confused the intensity of the warmth of the heart with the burning flame of the spirit. As he spoke, the scenery around him began to transform. The instruments fell silent, the lights gradually dimmed, and before me, the true faces of the people began to reveal themselves. Many were exhausted, others felt fear, and some appeared completely empty. Without music, without spectacle, nothing remained to nourish them. The hands that once rose with enthusiasm now trembled. It was as if the entire church had been built on adrenaline and not on faith. Jesus continued, "I am not here to entertain, but to promote a true transformation. The Holy Spirit is not just a fleeting emotion. It is a power capable of transforming the heart. While emotions fade when the lights go out, my presence remains, even in the deepest moments of silence." In the center of the stage, a pastor stood out, displaying a radiant smile and a look full of pride. He shared stories of achievements, inspiring visions, and impressive results. Behind him, a massive screen displayed graphs illustrating the growth of the congregation, weekly donations, and the number of followers reached. Jesus looked at me and said, "Look, Katerina, my word is no longer proclaimed to heal, but to measure. They count likes, not tears. They have turned the pulpit into a stage and conversion into a mere consumer experience." These words penetrated my being. I recalled the small churches of my youth, where people knelt for hours on the cold wooden floors, crying and thanking God with emotional and trembling voices. There were no screens or sounds, only the vibrant presence of Christ that permeated every corner. That was faith. That was the true essence of the church. Then, Jesus reached out his hand and everything transformed. Now, the megachurch stood deserted. The lights were off, and the seats were abandoned. In the center of the room, a lit candle flickered gently, surrounded by a deep silence. "This," he said, "is my true home, where a single flame still persists that never goes out." He continued, "I am not on the stages, but in the hearts that hold my memory. I do not seek the crowd, but depth. My church may not be large, but it will be vibrant and full of life." Looking at him, my spirit understood that this space symbolized millions of souls, sincere believers, but deceived by a Christianity that caresses instead of shaking, that offers comfort, but does not promote true conversion. Jesus looked at me again, and with a voice full of grace and authority he concluded, "The fifth way to prepare is to learn to discern the Holy Spirit from your personal emotions. Not everything that drives you comes from me, but everything that truly transforms you carries my mark. Do not seek only what provides you comfort. Seek what makes you true." These words resonated like a true shock in my soul. I realized that this message was not limited to contemporary churches, but was directed at every believer who confuses the intensity of a moment with the depth of faith. The vision began to fade, and then I saw Jesus lean beside a small lit candle. His light touched the flame, and in an instant, the fire reignited with an impressive force, illuminating the entire hall. "As long as there is a single sincere flame, I will never cease to shine," he said. I understood that even in the darkest nights of the church, a single burning heart is capable of igniting the flame that awakens the world. The image of the church slowly faded away, like the mist that dissolves under the rays of the sun. Once again, I found myself beside Jesus, in a place that was neither heaven nor earth, but a sacred border where a profound silence reigned. Her face reflected a serene peace, but also a palpable urgency. I had understood so much. I had witnessed the signs, the deceptions, and the divided hearts. Yet, even with all of that, I felt that something was still missing, as if all the experiences I had lived up to that moment needed to translate into a meaningful gesture. In a simple and true moment, which seemed to touch the sky, I realized that I was ready. Jesus looked me in the eyes and, with a firm voice, said, "Katerina, many understand with the mind, but few act with their hands." Many people have asked me what they should do to be considered ready, but I knew that readiness is not just an emotion. It is a ritual that repeats itself every day. Now, I will share 3 signs. Those who have kept them in their hearts and homes will find me when I arrive. He opened his hands, and before me, 3 lights appeared, floating in the air, each pulsing like the rhythm of a heart. The first light, he said, is the flame of prayer. Every night, light a blessed candle in your home. Create a deep silence, as if waiting for the arrival of a beloved. It is not necessary to say much. Allow the flame to express itself through you. It is a sign for the angels, a declaration that echoes in the heavens. The Lord is awaited in this place. Families, widows, and lonely young people gather, each lighting their small flame, transforming their homes into bright stars in the darkness of the night. Jesus continued, "Where this flame shines, darkness will not prevail." Then, a second light lit up, even more radiant, like an illuminated page. This second light is my word. Each morning before engaging with the world, take a moment to open the Bible. Read, even if it's just a verse, but make the connection. The notio. Meditate on it. Take it with you. The rapture will begin in the hearts that are open. My voice, like the first sound of the day, echoes. He revealed to me people who, upon waking, kept their phones turned off and dedicated themselves to opening the scriptures. The light that emanated from them seemed to nourish their souls like an invisible bread. Then, the third light appeared, the smallest, but the most vibrant. The third, Jesus said, is the work of kindness. Each day, perform a concrete act of love. Help someone who is suffering, even if it requires intense effort from you. Do this not to draw attention, but out of pure sincerity. The love that manifests in silence is the true sign that will recognize me. Thus, the 3 lights united into one, transforming into a cross. First, a heart. Then, pure light. These are the 3 signs of the Cathar return: the flame of prayer, the word at dawn, and the love that accompanies us throughout the day. Those who keep these signs will not fear the sound of the trumpet. I will pass by and recognize the light. As the sky vibrated in a divine serenity, I realized that those instructions were not mere symbols, but concrete, simple, and earthly promises capable of opening the doors of heaven. The light around me began to transform, as if eternity itself were slowing its breath. I felt that the vision was about to come to an end, and within me blossomed a longing I had never experienced before. I didn't want to go back. I wished to stay in that place, where the presence of Jesus filled every corner, where there was no fear, time, or loneliness. But Jesus looked at me with a sweetness that, at the same time, sounded like an order, and in that moment I realized that the time had come. "Katerina," he said with a serene voice, "you must return. Many are waiting for a sign, but I send you as a living word. Tell what you witnessed, but above all, live what you understood. Time is short, but my mercy extends. Those who light the candle, who open my word, and who practice good in silence, will be ready to be found. I'm not swayed by the clamor of gestures, but rather by the faithfulness of small things." His words reverberated within me like gentle waves. He presented me with one last image, the earth seen from above, adorned with millions of points of light. Some hearts were extinguishing, while others were igniting. "Every light you see represents a heart that longs for me," he said. "Do not be afraid of the world, Katerina. What you should fear is only the cooling of your own heart. I will return, as I promised, and the rapture will not be a punishment, but rather a meeting filled with love. You witnessed the preparation. Now, it is time to help them realize that holiness begins at home, amidst the soft light of a candle and a gesture of kindness." It was then that he placed his hand on my chest, and an irresistible warmth coursed through me, as if it were liquid fire. Everything around me transformed into light, followed by a deep silence, and then darkness took over. I could hear a distant noise, the pounding of my heart, and the difficulty of my breathing. When I finally opened my eyes, I realized I was back in the hospital, lying in a bed, surrounded by tubes and monitors that hummed softly around me. Doctors and nurses were moving hurriedly, discussing spontaneous resuscitation and what they called a medical miracle. My body felt heavy, but curiously, my spirit was lighter than ever. When Paolo and the children arrived, their faces reflected the fatigue and sadness of the vigil. I could only smile and squeeze their hands, conveying all the love I felt. I was at a loss for words, but deep down in my heart, I had already decided what I would do as soon as I could return home. The doctors were discussing trauma, coma, and presenting scientific explanations for what had occurred. They said I had been clinically dead for 6 minutes before vital signs were detected again. I just nodded, keeping my secret well guarded. 3 weeks later, when I finally returned home, the first thing I did was gather my family. I lit a candle on the dining table and opened the Bible. Paolo gave me a look of surprise, while the children, full of curiosity, settled around me. "I want to share something that transformed my life," I began to say, "and I wish for this to also begin transforming our family." Since that day, every night, we light a candle. Every morning, before picking up my phone, I allow myself to read a verse. It is a sacred moment that connects me with something greater. Furthermore, each day, I seek the opportunity to do a small good deed for someone, quietly, without photos, just for the pleasure of the gesture. Recently, I decided to call my sister Luisa. After years of silence between us, I simply said, "I forgive you and I love you. And it is not necessary for you to come back. I just want you to know that you are forgiven." On the other end of the line, I heard your crying. Our words were few, but something had transformed between us. In the church, while the pastor spoke once again about the rapture, mentioning dates and signs, I just smiled silently, absorbing that moment. I am certain that Jesus will return, but now I understand how I can prepare for that moment. It is not about trying to guess when it will happen, but about living each day illuminated by divine light. Instead of getting lost in videos about prophecies, I decided to dedicate my time to visiting elderly people who are alone. I left behind the WhatsApp groups that discuss the end times, and in their place, I found a new purpose. Moments of prayer with family. The peace I once experienced in that kingdom of light has now settled in my home and in my heart. I do not know when Jesus will return, but I know that at this moment, I am surrounded by love and serenity. It could be tomorrow, or perhaps not for years, but every night when I light the candle and observe my family united in prayer, I feel that we are ready, not out of fear, but out of love. The experience I lived transformed everything within me. I no longer look for signs in the sky, but rather the small lights that shine on earth. I no longer count the days until the rapture, but rather the acts of love that I can perform until then. I finally understood that heaven does not begin on the last day, but rather at the moment we learn to love in the same way that Jesus loved us. If you are following my story, I want you to pay attention to an important truth. It is not the grand sermons, the magnificent events, or the impressive miracles that prepare us for the true encounter. In reality, it is the small acts of everyday life that make all the difference. The flame of prayer shines brightly every night. The word is read with devotion every morning. Love is cultivated each day. Jesus is coming back, but in truth, he never left. He waits to be found now, in the silences that inhabit our home, in the pauses of the heart, and in the kindness that reveals itself in our gestures. And when the trumpet sounds, it will not be those who tried to calculate the date who will be taken, but rather those who lived each day as if they were already in the kingdom. This is my story. This is my experience. And every night, as I light the candle that illuminates the twilight, I feel once again that golden light that filled everything around me. And I know that I am not just reminiscing, but preparing myself, living the sky even before reaching it. It is an incredible and transformative story. The Bible teaches us, in John 3:8, that the wind blows where it wishes. You hear it, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit. I am immensely grateful, Katerina, for gifting us with this deep and revealing experience. And to you who have accompanied us this far, may the blessings of heaven fill your home, your family, and your heart. Remember, the rapture will not be perceived by those who get lost in date calculations, but by those who live each day as if they were already in the kingdom. May your candle remain lit, your Bible always be open, and your heart overflow with a silent love. Until the next video.